Right now, a silent financial collapse is unfolding, and we've just passed the point of no return. For 5 centuries, 6 different currencies have held the throne of global reserve. Their average reign? About 94 years. The US dollar has worn this crown since 1944. Do the math. The clock has run out. But currencies don't just expire from age. They are systematically dismantled through a process with 7 clear stages, a pattern we can trace to a single, decisive hotel meeting. Think about it. Every dominant empire was convinced their money was eternal. The Spanish real, the Dutch guilder, the French franc each believed their system was the exception. Yet all fell, not to armies, but to an identical economic sequence. And our dollar is now locked into that very same trajectory. Let me take you to July 1st, 1944, while D-Day battles raged. A different war was being waged in the Grand Ballroom of New Hampshire's Mount Washington Hotel. This conflict wasn't fought with bullets, but with balance sheets. The stakes? The future of global finance itself. 730 delegates from 44 nations gathered. Britain's team, led by the brilliant economist John Maynard Keynes, arrived with a desperate goal to salvage the pound sterling. But they brought little leverage. America, holding 2/3 of the planet's gold in its vaults, dictated the terms. The negotiations were less a discussion and more a surrender. To grasp what happened there, you must first understand the 3 initial phases that doomed Britain. This trio of stages is a recurring monetary pattern, and our dollar is now deep within the same cycle. Phase 1 is the era of hard assets. A currency is backed by something physical and finite like gold. The British pound was once unshakable, pegged firmly to gold. That fixed rate symbolized absolute trust in the empire's might. Then comes Phase 2, the substitution of paper promises for real value. People carry banknotes representing gold, not the metal itself. The system functions because faith remains high. Britain flourished here, financing global infrastructure and industry. But then, Phase 3 emerges. Unsustainable debt expansion. The demands of empire outgrow the finite gold supply. To fund World War I, Britain had to print far more money than it could back with gold. They suspended the gold standard in 1914, calling it a temporary wartime measure. 4 years later, the nation was buried in debt. A failed attempt to return to gold in 1925 proved the system was broken. By 1931, Britain abandoned gold for good. The pound plummeted, and global confidence evaporated. The sterling's reign was functionally over. World War II finished the job. Britain, shattered and indebted, needed American supplies. The Lend-Lease program came with a massive bill. By 1945, the UK owed the US a sum that, relative to its economy, was staggering. Their cities were rubble, their treasury was empty, and their gold was gone. So we returned to that New Hampshire ballroom. Keynes proposed a neutral global currency to prevent any single nation's dominance. The Americans rejected it. Their representative Harry D. Dexter White unveiled his plan. The US dollar, pegged to gold, would become the world's anchor. Every other currency would peg to the dollar. Global trade would now require dollars. The British delegates understood perfectly. They were witnessing the crown being passed. They had no choice but to agree. The Bretton Woods system was born on July 22, 1944. In that moment, the exorbitant privilege shifted from London to Washington. But here's what should concern every American. Britain didn't willingly surrender this power. They were forced out by a predictable financial pattern. Hard money became paper promises, became debt explosion, became collapse. And that identical sequence is visible in our dollar's story today. After Bretton Woods, America enjoyed an unprecedented advantage. A French finance minister later coined the term exorbitant privilege to describe it. When your currency is the global reserve, you can create money from nothing to purchase real goods from other nations. We printed dollars to buy German cars, Japanese tech, and Saudi oil. The world had to produce and export to earn dollars. We just had to run the presses. But this privilege contains a trap, one that ensnares every reserve currency. It's the Triffin dilemma, identified by economist Robert Triffin in 1959. He warned Congress of a fatal flaw. To supply the world with enough dollars for trade, America must run constant trade deficits, pumping more currency abroad. But the more dollars we create, the less each one is worth. Eventually, the world would doubt our ability to back them all with gold. Triffin foresaw the crisis. He was ignored. Through the 50s and 60s, everything seemed stable. Our economy was strong, and the dollar was as good as gold. But quietly, the math was turning. Every year, we printed more dollars for imports and global military presence. Every year, foreign central banks accumulated more of our currency. And some began to arrive at the Treasury, asking to swap their paper for actual gold at the promised $35 an ounce. The gold began flowing out of Fort Knox. In 1945, we held 20,000 metric tons. By 1960, it was 16,000. By 1965, 14,000. The trend was clear and accelerating. Then, France made its move. President Charles de Gaulle decided to call our bluff. He announced France would convert its dollar reserves into gold, sending naval ships to New York to collect the bars. Other nations watched closely. If France was nervous, perhaps they should be too. Spain followed. Germany asked questions. Switzerland converted more. A slow-motion bank run was underway. Between 1965 and 1971, EU's gold reserves plummeted from over 15,000 tons to just 8,100. We lost nearly half our gold in 6 years. At that rate, our vaults would be empty in a decade, with hundreds of billions of dollars still overseas, all redeemable for gold. President Nixon faced an impossible decision. On August 15, 1971, he went on television and announced the temporary suspension of dollar convertibility into gold. That temporary measure is now over 50 years old. The dollar immediately devalued. Foreign governments were furious. The Bretton Woods system was dead. The dollar immediately devalued. Foreign governments were furious. The Bretton Woods system was dead. We had moved from Phase 2 to Phase 3 overnight. Yet, the dollar didn't collapse. How did we manage that? The answer lies in a brilliant geopolitical deal struck in the Saudi desert. In July 1974, Treasury Secretary William Simon flew secretly to Jeddah. The recent oil crisis had left Arab nations swimming in petrodollars, threatening to destabilize everything. Simon proposed a deal. The U.S. would buy Saudi oil and provide military protection. In return, Saudi Arabia would do two things: price all its oil sales exclusively in U.S. dollars, and reinvest its oil profits into U.S. Treasury bonds. The Saudis agreed. OPEC followed. Suddenly, any country that needed oil needed dollars. OPEC followed. Suddenly, any country that needed oil needed dollars. Japan, Germany, Brazil. The entire world required a constant stream of American currency just to function. We had replaced gold backing with oil backing. This was Phase 4, the reserve currency propped up by geopolitical deals, not hard assets. The petrodollar system was genius. It created a feedback loop. We print dollars to buy imports. It created a feedback loop. We print dollars to buy imports. Exporters get those dollars and loan them back to us by buying our bonds. This keeps our interest rates low, allowing us to print even more. We financed a massive military consumer abundance and a high standard of living, all while the rest of the world effectively paid for it. But Phase 4 doesn't last forever. The debt keeps growing. The promises multiply. And eventually, the math overwhelms the politics. We learned to export inflation and extend our privilege, but we didn't repeal economic gravity. We only delayed it. And with each delay, the debt grew larger, setting the stage for Phase 5, the cracking of trust and the rise of alternatives. We didn't see it coming. The trigger date was February 28, 2022. While the world watched Ukraine, a financial shockwave rolled through central banks. The US and EU had frozen roughly $300 billion of Russia's central bank reserves. Think about the message that sent. Russia had earned those dollars through trade and stored them in the Western system, the supposed safe haven. Overnight, they were gone. Every central bank in China, India, Brazil, and Saudi Arabia saw this and asked one question: if our dollars can be taken, are they truly safe? This was the moment we weaponized finance and triggered the phase that has doomed every historical reserve currency. Phase 5 is here. Trust is fracturing. Alternatives are emerging. The search for options began immediately. China and Brazil agreed to settle trade in their own currencies. India bought Russian oil in rupees. Saudi Arabia discussed yuan-denominated oil sales. These are not symbolic moves. They are billion-dollar deals bypassing the dollar. The clear signal? Central banks started buying gold at a pace unseen since 1967, the year before the gold pool collapse. In 2022, they purchased 1,136 metric tons. China has added gold for 18 straight months. Poland, Singapore, Turkey all are diversifying into hard assets. This is the smart money voting. Meanwhile, our debt situation has entered the realm of fantasy. The U.S. national debt exceeds $35 trillion. But here's a number that matters. In 2024, the annual interest payment on that debt crossed $1 trillion. We now spend over $1 trillion per year just on interest, more than our defense budget, more than Medicare. And it's accelerating. The CBO projects $1.4 trillion by 2030 and $2 trillion by 2034. This is the debt spiral. This is phase 5 in real time. Can we grow out of it? Our debt-to-GDP ratio was 35% in 1980. Today, it's over 120%. The growth isn't fast enough. Can we monetize the debt? The Fed printing money to buy bonds creates inflation, destroying the dollar's value. That's how you move into phase 6, outright currency debasement. We are trapped. We can't tax enough, can't cut spending enough, can't let rates rise too high, and can't print without causing inflation. This is the same trap that caught Britain. The mathematics of empire are overwhelming the privilege. The exorbitant privilege was never a permanent right. Let me be clear. This isn't the end of America. The dollar won't vanish. But we are transitioning from a single-pole financial system to a multipolar one. The dollar's share of global trade will likely fall from 70% to 40 to 50%. The euro, yuan, and digital currencies will take more weight. For the average American, this means real consequences. Your dollar savings will lose purchasing power faster than reported. Import prices will rise. European vacations will cost more. Retirement plans based on a strong dollar need adjustment. But there will be winners. Those holding hard assets, real estate, commodities, precious metals will see their wealth hold value. Companies with global reach will adapt. The expanded BRICS bloc is actively building alternatives to the dollar system, new banks, payment networks, and local currency trade deals. This isn't a future theory. It's happening now, accelerated by our weaponization of finance. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. The British pound didn't disappear, but it lost about 60% of its purchasing power in the decades after World War II. We are watching the same mechanism unfold. The warning lights of phase 5 are flashing. Debt monetization is accelerating. Trust is eroding. The math is becoming unsustainable. The question isn't if the system changes, but how you are positioned when it does. Are your assets protected for a currency transition? Have you diversified beyond the assumption of permanent American financial dominance? The exorbitant privilege gave our generation an artificially high standard of living. But privileges are earned through strength and maintained by trust. When strength fades and trust cracks, the privilege moves on. We are not the first to learn this. We are just the latest. The 7-phase pattern has played out 6 times before. Each dominant currency thought it was the exception. None were. Hard money becomes paper claims, becomes debt explosion, becomes geopolitical backing, becomes weaponization, becomes currency crisis, becomes replacement. We are between phase 5 and 6. The coming years will define the new multipolar financial order. The smart money is already adapting. The question is, are you? If you found this breakdown valuable, help us spread the knowledge. Please like this video and make sure to subscribe Rich Root Official for more clear-eyed analysis.